Ladies and gentlemen, to our meet and greet with one of our two finalists for the Kansas City, Kansas Superintendent position. We have one tonight with Dr. Jayson Strickland and one tomorrow night with Dr. Charles Faust. And this is a great turnout. We know a few more people are coming in. I'm Ralph Turan. I am with Ray and Associates, the search firm that your Board of Education selected to help with the process of finding the next superintendent. We're very pleased with all the work that has gone in on the part of the board, the school district and staff, and the community in making this extremely important decision. In my opinion, and I've been a superintendent, I've not been a board member, but as a former superintendent, I think it is the most important decision a Board of Education makes. That's my opinion. And so this is very, very set apart time, and it is great to see all of you here. So, Dr. Strickland is here, and I'll say a few words about him in just a second, and then he'll talk a little bit more about himself for about 5 minutes. And there are a couple of things we really want your help with. Melissa is back there. Melissa, wave. There she is. She's been working hard, has probably gotten to most of you, but she has two things she really would like for you to do. There are these forms called candidate impression forms. And it has Dr. Strickland's name on it tonight. And then tomorrow the other finalists will have his name on it. And it seeks information from you. And the forms that you fill out will go directly to every Board of Education member. When we collect these from you, we're going to make 7 copies, one for each, a stack for each one of the board members. And each of the board members can look directly at your input regarding and your impressions. So very important. So please, if we really would like it if you'd leave one of these before you leave for the evening. The other one is a blank little card. And what we would like is, the way we're going to do this, after Dr. Strickland shares a little bit, for a few minutes, then David Smith in communications will be up here at the podium, and he will read questions that you submit from these cards. This is the way we're going to interact with each of the candidates, because it could be that there's the same question comes up, and David can kind of go through it and sort that out. And so that's the way we'll interact. It won't be a question and answer and raising your hands. It will be these cards. So take one, even if you don't have a question now. If you have one later, you raise your hand and get Melissa's attention, and she will get you a card or pick up your card, get it to David, and so that we can get to it. Okay? So the candidate forms that go to each board member like this, and a blank card for the questions for tonight. That's the way we're going to do it. Well, it is absolutely wonderful to have you here. It's a real pleasure for me to have the opportunity tonight to introduce Dr. Jayson Strickland. He has been in the district a long, long time, and even started at Peppermint Child Care Center. And then went through high school, has worked in the district. I identify a lot with him. I wasn't as long in the Wichita Public Schools, but I ended up as a 10-year-old in Wichita, Kansas, and went through elementary, middle, and high school, and then went to work in the district. And a lot of his experiences seem reminiscent of mine because I taught in the district. I then became an assistant principal, a director, an assistant superintendent. I did not become a deputy superintendent. I stopped there, and then I went to Grandview, Missouri, and I was superintendent for 10 years there. But he went on to be deputy superintendent. So he has a rich background in the district and knows it and has worked hard in this area. A lot of work on Diplomas Plus, which I'm sure will come up later, has happened. I will tell you that 15 or so years ago, and I was an assistant superintendent in Wichita, and I could see some of the work going on here in Kansas City, Kansas, and the improvements that were taking place through some of the initiatives here. And I said, I better go up there and study that place because there's something going on. I see Dr. Thompson out there. And one of the first places I went to see in Mary Stewart was what they were doing. And then I ended up in Grandview, and I just kept copying what I saw here. Great work with the kids who need that work the most. Are you with me? Every one of your kids. So I think that's all I'm going to say because we want to get going with hearing directly from Jayson today and then hearing what your questions might be to him. So, Dr. Strickland, it's great to see you, sir. You have about 5 minutes. Go for it.
The end. How do I follow that? Let me say thank you. Thank you for that. Ralph, thank you for the background information, and that is so very true. Let me add to it that not only have I worked in this school district my entire life, I am a product of this community. I am a dot through and through. Which kind of means that I remember getting locks made at Smallwoods. I remember getting hamburgers from Miss Newman's. I remember when Indian Springs had a maze underneath the escalators. I remember going to McDonald's on Parallel after games on Fridays. I have family that come out of Argentina that worked at the railroad. My father tells me interesting stories, some of them a little too long, about working at the railroad. So that background that Ralph gave you is important in terms of my work history, but I think it's important that you know that my life history is rooted right here in this community. They told me I had 5 minutes, which means I only get 2 closings and 1 wrap-up. Some of the preachers in the room know what that means. My brother back there, he knows. Thank you for the amen, brother. I appreciate it. But I do want to emphasize that community connection with roots that go back at least 3 generations. Because in our city, that makes a difference. It really means something. I started working, not only going to Peppermint, but I started working at Peppermint since birth because that was my father's daycare business. And when you have a family-owned business, you work early and you work often. But that taught me a lot. It taught me how to work with kids. It taught me entrepreneurship. It taught me not to be afraid of a dust mop, squeegee, cleaning the bathrooms. Even when I tried to take shortcuts, he made sure I had to get up out of the bed at night and go fix that. And I appreciate you, Father, for teaching me that. Schools that I have worked with in this system that gives you a sense of how I've been around. I have worked at William Allen White, Banneker, Welborn. I've been the principal at Carruthers. I've supported the schools in the Harmon cluster as an executive director. and the Schlegel cluster. My current role as the deputy, I have the good fortune of supporting all the schools. I've also been connected closely to the early childhood department, be that parents as teachers in our early childhood program. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of my work background. Something important to know is why me for this job and why am I wanting this job? Because I care about this community. When I hear you all, I care about the young people. I care about this school district, and it's sincere. I can't fake it because I have family in the community. I have family that works for the community, and they let me know that we owe our young people a good education, and I hope to be very much a part of that as a leader. I think that I am uniquely positioned, be that the background that I have in this community and in this school district, to build off of its strengths, but to address its areas of opportunity, not to shy away from them, to hit them head on. I know them, and I am positioned to work hard at addressing them because I've had the good fortune of being intimately connected to this community. And because of that position, I am fortunate to have long-standing relationships with people in this community. This work we do in regards to educating children cannot be done by itself. Not one person can make it happen, but one person partnering with a lot of people can do some amazing things. I think I am privileged to have good relationships in this community so that we can partner together and do good things for the young people in this community. With that, I'm sure I've gone over my 5 minutes, but I'm going to blame you all for some of that because you clapped a little long. Not that I'm complaining, because I absolutely needed that. So, Mr. Smith.
Dr. Strickland.
What you got for me, sir?
And you've talked about this a little bit, but there are a number of questions that really get to why you feel that you're uniquely qualified for this role in this community at this time. So can you talk in more specifics about the things that you think will qualify you and make you the right person for this position?
Thank you, sir, for that. And whoever posed that question, thank you for that. A lot of you may be aware, let me answer that by talking about something specific in our school district. A lot of you may be aware of our Diploma Plus program. The Diploma Plus program is a promise that we have made to the students in this community that we will graduate them with more than a high school diploma. A high school diploma is not enough anymore. Our students need more than a high school diploma. And so our Diploma Plus program has been around for about 3 years. And we're graduating students with college hours, with industry-recognized certificates, acceptance into the military, and a few other, and we call them endorsements. Why I am uniquely positioned to support this system is because I have been here from the beginning of it. I have seen how that has built to this particular point in time, and I have seen how it is gaining momentum. And it is at a critical point. It is at a fragile point. We've established key relationships with partners across the metro and with universities. And I feel fortunate to know those people on a first-name basis, to know them. They have my cell phone number. They text me often. And to say, we need this. Can you do this for us? That translates into internships for our students, externships for our teachers. It translates into resources for our young people. So that's one example of being uniquely positioned. I'm intimately connected to a program that is starting to gain some momentum and doing some good things for our young people. Diploma Plus is something that will change the very fabric of this community because it will give our young people jobs, give them access to jobs. Jobs in our community translates into commerce into our community. And when there's commerce in our community, people have to stand up and recognize and respect that. So I believe that is one example. On the other side of that is I see areas that we need to address. We have opportunities to strengthen our academic performance. I am in no way shying away from that. I think we have to do better academically. That translates into higher ACT scores, higher graduation rates, stronger reading scores, stronger math scores. I'm connected to things right now we are in the process of working on those things right now. And so that's an example on the other side. Areas that we have to get better at, I am already working on. In the position as superintendent, I believe that strengthens my position to move those things even faster.
There are a number of questions that, they're related to that. I think people are wondering, they wanted to know about Diploma Plus and where you stood with that. And I think you've talked about that. Is it the right work? Are we headed in the right direction? And are there some specific things that you think do need to be changed or focused on or improved?
I absolutely believe Diploma Plus is the right work. As I mentioned earlier, it equips our students with more than that high school diploma.
Right.
I think that it allows them to be marketable to employers, and universities will come after them.
Sure.
And so I do believe it is the right work. I believe that opportunities for it to involve, now say that fast twice. But I believe opportunities for it to involve building off of our small businesses in Kansas City, Kansas. You heard me reference two in the room. I see some Newmans back there, and we have to, and Smallwood Lot Company, we have to connect stronger with the small businesses, because I think in our city we have a culture of small businesses. You heard me talk about growing up in Peppermint. Well, that family business taught me a lot. It taught me a lot, and I'm very proud. I think that our students are filled with entrepreneur ideas, and we have to give them the opportunity to cultivate those ideas. So I believe that's an area that Diploma Plus can evolve. I also believe that it is another area related to Diploma Plus to evolve is to strengthen the work in the social emotional area. Employers say often that the technical skills are important. We need them to know A, B, C. 1 + 2 is 3. They have to know that. But they also have to know how to get to work on time. They have to know how to look somebody in the eye and shake their hand. They have to know how to be polite. They have to know how to collaborate with others. They have to know how to problem solve issues in a productive way. I'm fortunate enough to have lots of conversations with partners who tell us that often. And so I believe that's another area for our work in Diploma Plus to evolve. I also believe that we can push it through the system in a stronger way. Meaning, how do we strengthen the connection of Diploma Plus at our early childhood level, at our elementary level, at our middle school level, so that they know that they are the absolute foundation of our students graduating with more than that high school diploma.
Excellent. We have a number of staff in the room, and I have a feeling that this question might have come from some of them. But talk about the curriculum, strengths, areas for improvement. How are we doing with that?
You know, I think our curriculum is at an important place in its development, meaning that I have the good fortune of working with our director of curriculum, Mr. Alan King, and we have been brainstorming ways that how do we start to evolve a curriculum. One thing that I think our curriculum has to do is it has to be flexible enough so that it can be customized for individual student needs. And so that's one area I think our curriculum can be strengthened. The other area is our curriculum has to be pointed towards meaningful outcomes. For example, it has to prepare them for life. So it has to include some of those social emotional skills embedded within the curriculum. So that's an area that it has to improve. It also has to prepare students for the careers and the interests that they have, meaning that we don't want them to work only to know X equals blank. They have to know that knowing X equals blank prepares me to be an engineer, a scientist, an entrepreneur. So those are ways in which our curriculum can evolve, incorporating more of the social emotional skills and being more clearly connected to industry needs.
Okay, let's see. There's a question about family engagement, and this person points out that Latinos are 50% or more of the students in the district. So given that family engagement often leads to success for young Latino students, how will you work to engage parents, grandparents, and in particular those who have challenges with both status and language?
Absolutely. That is the right question for our school district. Our school district is one of the most diverse places you will ever find, and that is truly our strength. One of the things that I have been working closely with my staff and my team is a resource that we will be putting in place next year. Is called the Family and Engagement Community Specialist. For short, we call it the FACES position. That's the acronym for that. And what that position will do is to facilitate families being connected to schools. And so that resource is strictly dedicated to helping families feel welcomed. And so that's one example of some work that I am leading that helps, at least my team and I are working together to help make sure that our families are connected to our schools. But on a broader sense, we have to make sure that our staff is culturally proficient, that they truly understand what it means to be a welcoming environment for a family. And that's incumbent upon us as staff members. We have to make sure that they are welcomed. And that means establishing relationships with them, understanding their needs, and catering and customizing our connection to them to meet their needs. So the FACES position is something specific. On a broader sense, we as staff members have to truly better understand the needs of our family and make sure that we can make them welcomed as they come into our buildings. And that translates into professional development and resources for our teachers and schools.
Excellent. A number of questions relating to the area of leadership, and in particular, how you go about developing leadership in the district and ensure that there's a pipeline of quality leaders that follow you and others. What do you do to support and develop leadership?
You know, I think the best indicator of leadership is how you model it and the people you get to work with. And so I am going to do something that I probably have a little bit of an advantage in terms of doing this. So if you have worked with me in any capacity at all, will you please raise your hand in this room? So I say that, look around and see that. Now, the reason I have you do that is this. I can stand up here and tell you what kind of leader I am, and I'm sure it'll come out of my mouth and sound really fancy and good and right. At least I hope it would sound that way. But let me tell you, I think the best indicator of a quality leader is what the people that leader work with, what they say about them. So I encourage you and I challenge you to solicit some input from people you saw raise their hand in this room. And you ask them specifically, what kind of leader is Jayson Strickland? Now, to give you some background around, I am a very collaborative person. I believe in empowering others. I believe in growing others. I truly believe an indicator of a leader's success is how he grows the people around them, or she grows the people around him. That is an indicator of a leader's success. Something specifically I had the opportunity to do this year, but it got cut short because we kept having snow days on that day, but which some people didn't complain. But I had an opportunity to have a study group with a group of who I would consider are aspiring and superstar leaders coming up in this system. And I was fortunate to study with them as a colleague and peer, and we had some texts that we read together, and we pushed each other's thinking, and we talked about the system. And I challenged them, and I believe this is an illustration of the type of leader that I am. I said, I am the deputy superintendent in this school district. When we come to this book study, I want you to treat me like a peer. That means if you say, hey, I can't stand the deputy superintendent, I need you to be able to say that out loud. Or if you have to say that the system needs to do this better, I need to position myself where I can hear that. And so, again, that was a lot of rambling for that question, but I want to, again, say, ask the people in this room, what kind of leader am I? And I believe that you will get honest feedback. And that probably is a clearer and more accurate representation of the type of leader I am than the one that I could give you. Because I'm going to embellish it some, because, by the way, I'm trying to get a job if you hadn't heard that.
Excellent. Talk to us about a specific challenge that you faced in your role as deputy, how you responded to that challenge, and importantly, what did you learn from that experience?
You know, that is a tough question because I think I am faced with challenges regularly. And let me maybe in general talk about my strategy with dealing with challenges. Is I try to keep the goal or the outcome in front of me. And in our work, the goal or the outcome is centered on student success. And so whatever challenge that I am dealing with, the one that is hard or difficult or whatever challenge that I am dealing with is one that is driven by student success. So I try to anchor any decision in student success. The other thing that I regularly and consistently do is to gather input and feedback from many, particularly those that are closest to the challenge, and ask how do they recommend we address that. In many instances, dealing with a challenge means empowering others. And so a lot of what we do is empower others, or at least I try to do is empower others. Something that we have in the workings right now in terms of a challenge is we need to address ACT scores. A team member, Mr. Ed Marquez in the room, came to me with an idea on how do we address ACT scores. Well, Ed went out and solicited some financial support. How I was able to support that was to say, Ed, you have permission to do that, and go do that. Not only, Ed, do you have permission, Ed, I want you to ask forgiveness. Don't ask permission from me. I want you to be a risk taker. And that is what I promote in trying to deal with challenges. How do we creatively do that? So ACT is one example of that. The family engagement was another challenge that we faced. We needed to do that. The FACES position, the Family and Community Engagement Specialist, was one example that came out of it, or at least that was one resource that came out of trying to address that challenge. And that came from collecting a lot of input from people and getting some suggestions on how we can improve and increase the family engagement. So those are two specific examples.
And is there anything that you can think of that might be a learning that you got from wrestling with difficult issues and challenges?
I think that collecting input from those that are closest to it is something that I learned. I think that, and that's something that has been affirmed throughout my career, is that I am fortunate and blessed to have the deputy superintendent position. But I realize that it can be far removed from the classroom. It can be, it is far removed. And so I don't profess to know more about addressing a teacher's challenge than a teacher. And so something that I learned is be sure, and not just learn, but affirm, be sure that you empower others, that you bring them into the solution process. And I have to guard against being quick and reactive to something, because I sit behind a desk that's several layers removed from some problems, and what I think may be a solution may not feel right for the classroom teacher.
Sure.
And so I have to make sure classroom teachers, in some examples, have the opportunity to shape and be kind of the solvers of their own problems, given the adequate resources and needed resources.
Okay. We have a number of questions that relate to specific subgroups within the district. I want to begin with one which begins talking about Latino students, but I think we have, knowing that we have close to 80 different home languages, quite a number of immigrant populations. So given the current discourse on immigration, what steps can the district take to ensure that immigrant families feel safe and supported and obviously, you know, well educated?
You know, I think we stay the path that, frankly, that our current administration has said, that all of our families are welcomed in our school district, that we are obligated to make them all feel welcomed, and we are obligated to make them all feel safe. That means, thank you for that. You know, I won't get on this rant, but I could. But I won't get on this rant. It is sad to see what happened in the news. It is so inhumane to think that that would be okay. And to tell you the truth, without getting on a political stance, but leadership has to stand up and make a call and stand for something in situations like that. I think it is our system's obligation to stand up for the rights of all of our students. Stand up with passion, stand up with strength, and say, these are our kids, we love them, we protect them, and we're going to make sure that they are all right in our system. And if that means our district being out in front of something, leading something, I think that's okay. If that means our district getting their hands slapped, I think that's okay. Sometimes, like I said, I do have the philosophy of ask forgiveness rather than permission. And when you are asking, or when you are functioning like that, you are driven by doing the right thing. And doing the right thing in situations like this and our immigrant families is making sure that they feel welcome and safe. And so I would charge schools to make sure that they connect with families, have relationships with families and students. That is critical for them so that our families feel safe and they know that school is a safe place for them. Out of all the places they got to be, that's the one place they ought to not be worried about anything.
Okay. The next group I want to ask you about is students receiving special education services, and in particular, students who have some form of dyslexia. What procedures will you put in place to identify students struggling with reading in particular and showing signs of dyslexia?
I think what that entails is, you go back to my philosophy of solving challenges. Let's have some conversations with the classroom teacher. Let's be specific in analyzing the needs of students. We've gotten rather sophisticated in the area of literacy, meaning that we can diagnose student needs early on, and we specifically know what will help them grow and learn. What I encourage us to do in situations like that is to individualize the instruction, specifically what an IEP says do. Let's individualize the instruction to specifically meet those needs. Now, what that translates into is knowing what the child needs, making sure teachers have the resources to address those needs. That means the professional development that they need and the curriculum materials that they need in order to help them grow. But also bringing in the families. Families have to be a part of that process. The IEP process requires that families are a part of that process. So families have to be at the table and shape that education experience because they have a perspective on the needs of their child also. And so they have to feel empowered to address those needs. Teachers have to have the resources. We have to specifically diagnose what it is. So those are some of the specific steps that I would lead and encourage and do in our system now.
Next, talk about early childhood and the relative importance of it and what you would do to support it.
Amen. Thank you for that, because You know, I come from a background of early childhood. I learned how to work with children ages 2 and 3 because my dad had me as cheap help. And the cheap help was to take these 2 and 3-year-olds and teach them something, teach them how to count, teach them their name. And so I have a long history of supporting early childhood. I have a passion of supporting early childhood. And if you can hang around a 2 and 3-year-old for half a day, let me tell you, there's a whole lot of things you can do in life. A whole lot of things. If you can hang around a classroom with 2 and 3-year-olds, and trust me, I have been tested. I have some miles on me when it comes to 2 and 3-year-olds. So first of all and foremost, I have a passion for that particular area. I think the research is clear. Students, particularly in environments like ours, have to have access to early childhood programs. So we have to make sure our early childhood programs are of quality and they have the resources to support those young people. And so, you know, I'm sorry I got passionate about that one, so I'm going to ask you to read that one again. I want to make sure that I address that.
Talk about early childhood, its importance, and how you plan to support it.
As superintendent, you in this community and this school district will know that that's an unwavering support from me. First of all, I had to go home and talk to my dad if I didn't. And I wouldn't want to do that. But you heard me say that my work, my core, my essence is driven by doing the right thing. And supporting early childhood is doing the right thing for young people. And so, regardless of the resources, I have to look at myself in the mirror and know that this is good for young people, so I have to commit to making sure we do good for young people. So that is how I feel about early childhood.
Okay. What about alternative education options for students who are at risk or who are struggling in the general education environment?
This is an underutilized area in our system. I have been working with the Student Services Department to create expanded alternative services in our school district. And what that means is, I think we have to redefine how we look at alternative services. We've been educating students the same way for over 100 years. But students have evolved. Now, let me tell you how they have evolved. How many of us have one of these in our pocket?
We all do.
Now, let me tell you that one of these right here can probably teach a kid almost anything that they want to know. They come to school just because they feel like it. They come to school and give us their attention because most of them are polite like that. So it becomes incumbent upon us to teach them, because when they want to learn something, they go here. I taught myself something about the iPhone yesterday on YouTube because I couldn't figure it out. And I learned that from a young person. Go to YouTube and they'll tell you how to do that. So that connects to alternative services because it's an illustration of how education has to evolve and figure out how do we educate students in an alternative way. So alternative services is something I believe that is completely underutilized. I think we have to look at things like, how do we give students access to virtual learning? Because they're learning virtually right now all the time. How do we equip teachers in a way that they can facilitate that learning for our students? So alternative learning is a way to better educate students. And it connects to a philosophy that I would like to see us go down the road in terms of innovation. We need to personalize instruction more. We need to customize it. In alternative education, we need to erase kind of the bad connotations associated with it. Because everybody in this room learns in an alternative way. I don't care what it is. Everyone in here learns in an alternative way. We need to do that for our young people because they are learning on their own, and our system has to be evolved enough to catch up to them. Sure. So I believe alternative learning is something that will have to evolve. I am in the process of planning what those services can evolve to with our Student Services Department and hope to have some new things in place next year.
What about the fine arts, band, orchestra, choir, theater, art? Talk about the importance of that.
An absolute necessity. It is an absolute necessity. The commitment you heard me speak to around early childhood is the same commitment I have towards the fine arts. I can remember teaching at Banneker and working with the specials teachers and getting such a appreciation for what they do for our young people. A complete student is one that's been exposed to the fine arts. It is our obligation as an education system to make sure that they have access to all of those things, because our students' interests need to drive where they land. And many of our students respond best through the areas of fine arts. That's how they connect to school. And so when you hear me talk about customizing instruction and personalizing it, the fine arts is a venue in which we can do that for our young people. It makes for a better person.
Excellent. This might not be the easiest question, but there are a number.
No, just
okay.
Pass. Is there a pass option?
There are a number of questions that have to do with the Board of Education and your relationship with them and how you anticipate working together with them in order to create the work and the change that you see happening in the district.
The superintendent and board relationship is a necessity. It has to be of quality. They have to be moving in the same direction. In order for a system to have success, those two groups, the superintendent and the board, have to be pushing the same direction. That does not mean they have to get, they don't have to agree with everything all the time. In fact, they do need to have diverse opinions. But they have to have the end goal of student success in mind. That has to drive the work. And so how I anticipate cultivating that relationship is being clear about the end goal. That student success is the end goal. Me, as your choice as superintendent, I will let that drive me. I expect the board to remind me to let that drive me. But I would ask permission of the board to let me remind them. Let that drive them too. Because that is ultimately what we are all here for, is student success. And so I anticipate, I am confident of a quality relationship. I believe our board is committed to doing good things for young people. I hope to be in a position where I can help them achieve that. I hope that they are committed to helping me as their superintendent achieve good things for young people. We might not agree all the time, but we would never stop pushing for success for young people. And so that's what I'm committed to. And I'm kind of funny, and I hope they would appreciate that and hope they would get along with that.
There are a number of questions about finding, attracting, developing, and keeping quality staff. Talk about what you would do to make sure that we have the very best in front of our young people.
You know, as I have thought about this work, I have thought about this being a key area of opportunity for our system. How we recruit, retain, onboard, develop our talent is one of the most important things for our system. Some of you have heard me say this in many ways. So I'm going to talk about it in layers. The most important space in a school system is the space between teacher and student. That is the most important space. That space has to be quality. One factor that makes it quality is having quality teachers. One way of getting quality teachers is having an efficient and effective recruitment and retainment and onboarding system. And so I believe that we have to make sure that they have the resources that they need. They have to be professionally developed in the way that helps them be successful. We have to point them towards results, help them get those results, and then celebrate those results so that they feel good about their work. They have to feel good about that work. So helping them be successful by the resources that they need, the professional development that they need is critical so that they will want to stay with us. So a way to address some of that is I believe we have to go to the front line and ask teachers very directly, be candid with us. What will help you be successful and be responsive to those needs? We have to be intentional about how we recruit. We have to have a successful school district. A successful school district helps people want to come to it. It makes us attractive. I believe that we have to leverage the relationships that we have. Let me give you an example of that. I have relationships with the people in this room, and I told you and challenged you, and I hope that you do, go ask people that have worked with me as a leader. I trust the reputation that I have with them. And if some of them don't always give you glowing remarks about me, at least it is the truth in their opinion. Now, I cite that example because I think that example illustrates that I'm trusting the people I have relationships to be advocates for me. In how we recruit teachers, I believe that we have to talk to the teachers that are here, empower them help recruit teachers for us. Because I think a teacher talking to a teacher saying, come to Kansas City, Kansas, because we do this, this, and this well, and you will feel supported like this, this, and this, is one way of supporting teachers differently than we have done in the past. Another thing is I think we have to be committed to alternative ways of recruiting them and onboarding them and getting them in the system. We have the Fellows program in place. I think something that we need to consider is how do we grow our own? I knew early on that I wanted to be a teacher, early on. I believe there are lots of students in our system that may be considering it and may want to be a teacher. But if we can find out that interest and connect them to teachers and get them involved in our work, I believe that we can cultivate that and grow our own. There's a statistic that says that most teachers end up teaching in about 125-mile radius of the school district or the community that they lived in. When I hear that statistic, it tells me that the solution of our problem is within 125 miles of us. So we have to work hard within 125 miles of us to ensure that those that are interested can be grown and nurtured to help our students achieve. You heard me talk about, and why I think that's particularly important for our community is, when I was a principal at Carruthers, and the fact that I was educating young people in a building on a street that I grew up on, excuse me. I distinctly remember telling young people, I used to play basketball in that corner right over there. I fell down and had to get stitches by tripping over that curb right over there. And when the young people would look at me and say, you played on, at the time, Hawthorne's playground? I'm like, yeah, I played on Hawthorne's playground all the time. We used to make ramps and jump off of stuff. But the fact that I could connect to them in that way, the conversation was completely different. It was completely different because they had something that we could build from. And so this ideal of recruiting, I believe, and retaining, one of the things we have to explore is this notion of growing our own. And if we can't grow our own, how do we better involve the community, period? Right. Because I believe the community can be teachers and not necessarily have the title of a teacher. Yeah. I know there are people in the audience now that work with young people all the time. They every bit are good teachers for our young people. They're every bit helping our young people. So how do we leverage those relationships and put them more in our schools in absence of having a long line of teachers at the door waiting to be employed?
Sure, makes sense. couple of things I want to follow up on because they relate to questions that I have a number of. Culture of the system. How is the culture of the system right now, and what specific things would you do to strengthen it?
I appreciate that question, and I promise you I didn't plan it out there, because I believe that this is an opportunity for us too. I believe, frankly, that our teachers and our staff, our leaders, administrators are working very hard, and we're tired, we're weary.
Yeah.
The load is heavy. The load is heavy. We haven't dropped it, but we are weary. So related to an opportunity for us is I believe we have to celebrate our success more. I believe that that addresses morale. I believe that that helps the culture. When you hear about attracting, and we go back to the question before, how do we attract quality staff? Culture is something that we can control. Now, I'm going to be frank, and a thing that I would like to be able to say and might even give me a lot of applause, but it would be that I would like to triple and quadruple salaries of everybody. Now let me reel that in some, you all. But the reality of our work is this. There probably will never be a line of people at our doors beating on the door ready to just throw money at us. And that's unfortunate, because the work that we do is important enough that there should be a line at the door, people throwing money at educators and people that support educators. Absence of that, what we should focus on is, do we have the kind of culture in our system that is rewarding outside of that compensation? And so I truly believe that culture in any organization starts with leadership.
Sure.
The leader must model the kind of culture that's important. If the leader can connect with people, if the leader can make people on a genuine and sincere way, make them feel valued and appreciated, people will be grateful for that.
Sure.
And it will improve the culture. And I believe the leadership that I would be able to practice in our system is one that could help our culture. Okay. With that question, when you're asking about my leadership style, I'd encourage you to ask people that I have the good fortune of supporting the kind of culture we have in our teams too. Because I think that'll give you a sense of the type of leader that I am.
Okay. Just what about the non-instructional staff? Talk about them and how you would support their work.
Critical. They make the work possible. They absolutely make the work possible. I've had the good fortune over about the last 2 months to get more closely related to the operational side of the house. And I have grown, and I've always had a respect for them. But to hear their thinking on a more intimate level, it has so greatly increased my respect for them, because I recognize that, and I've always known this, I recognize that this work does not happen without them. We don't sit in these chairs without Mr. Tatum setting them up. We don't have these lights on without Dr. Mather paying the bills or making sure that the bulbs are changed from Doug and his team back there. We don't. That side of the house is important. And it makes that space between teacher and student possible. Without them being supported, without them feeling valued, and they are very valuable. I have heard some of the best recommendations for our work come from that side of the house, particularly over the last few months. And so they have to have complete access to shaping our work moving forward. They are important to the success of this system, and the next superintendent, which hopefully is me, has to ensure that they have access to shaping that work.
Absolutely. Okay. One more question, and then I'll give you a chance for for a final statement. Talk about the state and state funding and the lawsuit and how you plan to continue to advocate for the resources that the district needs to be successful.
You know, our school district has been a leader in this area, not just for the young people in the Kansas City, Kansas community, but the young people in the state. Our leader has taken a lead role in making sure that our legislators understand the value of education. We've been fortunate to be out in front of that, and I think as the next superintendent, it's critical that I take the baton and continue to push hard, particularly for students that look like our students. Because the students that look like our students don't necessarily look like all the students across the state of Kansas. They have to have representation and they have to have a voice in the legislature. And so, leveraging the relationships that I have that have actually been brokered by people like yourself, which I appreciate, but also the connections I have with the state board, with the Commissioner of Education. Those are people that know me on a first-name basis. And I have no hesitation on picking up the phone and saying, KCK needs this. Our state needs this. The flip side of that is they have no hesitation on calling me. What does KCK need? What would be helpful for this? And I feel comfortable and confident saying this would help our students. And so I think KCK, that's our obligation. Sure. We have to make sure our students are represented at that table. Otherwise, we might not get the food at the table.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to give you 1 minute to wrap up more than 40 years of life and more than 20 years of education.
Well, in my first closing, no, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. I want to say thank you for the questions. The applause you gave me made me emotional. And I say that with the most sincerity, because it shows the support that you have for me. And I appreciate that. But this work is bigger than me. It's absolutely bigger than me. Although I appreciate the applause and the support for me, this work is about our young people. And so whoever ends up in that middle chair, this kind of support has to be there for them. The load is heavy, but they can be successful if this support is there. An analogy my team hears me overuse is that lifting a couch by yourself is hard, but lifting it with a group of people, it's very doable. We have to work together, lift that couch, and do good things for the young people in this district and in this community. It changes the very fabric of it. It changes how it looks. It changes it for the better. So again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this support. And I invite you to continue that kind of support, to hold your next superintendent, your Board of Education accountable for doing good things for young people, because that's what's most important. So thank you for your time. Ask my colleagues about me as a leader, about my style. Get the truth from them. Thank you all.